Right. We are going to start the third session today, third lesson, third module or third topic, that is assessment of HRD needs. Students, am I audible? And is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, uh, what you are doing? Are you playing with the screen? Right. Uh, Assessment of HRD needs. We did an introduction, and then we talk about HRD and learning. So basically learning principles, learning theories, and learning strategies, learning styles. We discussed learning curves. We discussed, and based on that knowledge, now we are going to discuss about how we can assess the HRD needs, right? So before any HRD intervention, before any HRD effort designing, we need to understand whether there are any need for human resource development, right? So just first understand whether there is any need for training and development or HRD, human resource development uh, program, right? So how that can be done is taught here today. And this is HRD. This is the HRD process. We'll delete this one. Right. Right. This is the human resource development process, starting with assessment of needs. Then once the need assessed, need identified, then we can design a program, and the design program can be implemented, and finally that can be evaluated whether the objectives of this HRD program is achieved or not is identified by this evaluation, right? So this is the entire HRD process uh, by which simply you can start a HRD program, implement, design it, and implement it, and finally evaluate it. So this is the way how you can do a HRD intervention, right? So that the entire process is taught one by one in the coming weeks. And for today, I'm going to discuss about the first step, how you can assess the training needs or HRD needs or development needs, right? This is called, this entire process is called HRD process, right? So now, introduction to the need assessment. HRD is an effective if it successfully addresses some organizational need, right? So usual practice is people sometimes used to develop or start or design programs without identifying the need, right? So first we need to identify whether there is a need for development, in the sense that there is a gap for development, right? So what is lacking in the employees need to be first identified, and then only we can decide an HRM, we can determine or we can design an HRM intervention or HRD intervention, in other words, right? So first, the important thing is we need to identify a training need or development need or HRD need, whether there is a requirement uh, to do this kind of an HRD program. So the requirement is needed to be identified. So that's an important thing. Otherwise, the entire process, the HRD process, will be uh, 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 lost, because the program has been designed uh, not depending on a particular requirement, right? The resources will be wasted. So how are those needs identified? The answer is through conducting need assessment. HRD programs should be designed and conducted using this phase or four-stage approach. First one, need assessment, as you noted in the previous slide. So we have basically four stages: assessment, design, implementation, and evaluation. So basically, HRD programs are conducted based on uh, these four uh, stages. The purpose of this lesson is to discuss the first phase, that is the first stage, as we discussed the need assessment part. Basically, we are going to discuss about the need assessment, right? This one, the same thing, we are going to discuss this one. Assessing the needs and prioritizing the needs. In this step, basically, we have to think about, we have to consider, we have to follow two sub-steps, two stages in this particular step. So first, assessing the needs, then prioritizing the identified needs. Are those two steps. Then design and those things will be discussed in later lessons. And finally, and then after that, based on the design, we can implement, and finally we can evaluate. Each sub steps will be discussed in later lessons, right? So today the yellow highlighted area is the focus, and this is the process. And need assessment, definition and purpose. Right? So basically, what do you mean by need assessment? Need assessment can identify organization's goals and its effectiveness in reaching these goals, and whether we have discrepancies or gaps between employee skills and skills required by the required for effective job performance, or gaps between current skills and the skills needed to perform job successfully in the future. Right? So basically in this need assessment, in the assessment of identification, in other words, of needs, can identify whether the goals, an organization's goals and its effectiveness in reaching these goals, whether the goals have been established, whether the goals already established are effective, whether they are reachable, whether they are possible to achieve, right? So we can simply understand from the need assessment, and simply we can understand any gap between the employee's current skills and required skills, right? So required and current, whether there is any difference between the current and the required skills of the current employees, right? Or in other words, we can identify whether we have a gap between current and required in the future requirements, future jobs, for the current jobs and the future jobs. Current jobs, as you know, basically we are doing the training. We train, we are focusing to develop knowledge, skills, and attitudes in the current employment. Basically, we are focusing training, right? For future jobs, basically, giving knowledge, skills, and attitudes. For the future jobs, we are focusing development, right? So here, the basic, these two steps, this one is focusing on the current job performance, and the third one is focusing on the future job performance, right? So the required skills and the actual skills required for the current job performance, and the difference between required skills and the current skills for the future job performance, the gaps between can be identified. The gaps between current and required skills for the future job performance, and the gaps between current skill and the required skill for the current job performance, right? The same for the future job performance can be identified with need assessment. And the conditions under which uh, the HRD efforts can be implemented, also can be identified through need assessment. Which conditions, under which conditions we have to conduct our HRD program? Simply need assessment. We can, in the need assessment, we can understand, right? So we'll look at those things later on, how we can do those things. And based, these are the importances, simply purpose. This is the purpose, right? This is the purpose of need assessment. In that, you can identify 4 basic purposes. And what is HRD need? Right? Need is a discrepancy or gap between what an organization expects to happen and what actually occurs. Right? The discrepancy is a gap between what an organization expects to happen and what actually occurs. What expects to happen and what actually occurs. What is expected and what is currently having. The difference between these two is the need. Right? We are expecting the employees' knowledge, skills, and attitudes at this level, 80%. But the current, the employee is currently having 50%. Right? So then there is a 30 difference. So that 30 difference need to be filled by organizing an HRD intervention. Right. So there are so many examples given. A discrepancy exists if a production supervisor has been given a production target to complete within 24 hours. That is the expected level. Right? That is the expected level. Within 20, target need to be finished, completed within 24 hours. And he is taking 36 hours. Expectation is 24 hours and currently is taking 36 hours, right? So then in that case, the additional 12 hours are taken. That is totally a waste. That is beyond the expectation, right? That is out of the expectation. So in that case, we need to bring back to the expected level, bring back that employee to the expected level, right? So for that, how we can do that? Basically through training and development, through developing employee, simply. And when a police officer is expected to use minimum force, the police officer, to apprehend the suspects, police officer is supposed to use a minimum force to apprehend the suspects, but he is using the maximum force, right? So in that case, when he is using maximum force, he has not been trained to perform his duties. In that case, expected level is to use minimum force, and the actual is using maximum force. So there is a difference, and that difference is the need for HRD, need for development. These discrepancies may become the foundation of a training and development or HRD need. Right? Basically, we are supposed to identify a need. Need is a discrepancy between the actual and the current. Knowledge, skill, attitude, or other competencies. We have some more examples. Identified need in this sense focus on correcting substandard performance, which means that if you can identify those gaps and correct or fill those gaps, obviously can increase the performance of those employees. Because here, for example, if this employee is expected to complete the target within 24 hours, but he is taking 36 hours, right? So through a training intervention, through a development intervention, if we can reduce up to 24 hours, obviously the resources are uh, saved, right? In that case, company can increase the performance of this employee. Suppose after the training, he is now completing the task within 20 hours, within 15 hours, right? So then the expected jobs can be done by saving more resources. So that ultimately happen to result goes to increase the performance of the entire business, of the entire organization. Right. In some cases, HRD intervention may be necessary to correct the discrepancy. Obviously, HRD intervention help to fill the gap. Sometimes another HR intervention, some proving company, even though the HRD intervention is given, sometimes the gap may be existed. Why? Maybe due to another reason, right? So sometimes training development or HRD intervention itself cannot be resolved any gap. Sometimes, in some cases, maybe some other reasons need to be addressed that cannot be addressed by a HRD intervention. Maybe another management action may be needed. For example, replacing a machinery or negotiating new work rules with the union, or maybe another reason. And those cannot be accommodated by a HRD intervention, right? So what we need to highlight, what we need to understand from this, we need to focus only on the HRD interventions rather than other things. But remember, in need assessment, we need to understand whether only HRD intervention can meet those identified needs. If then only we can target for HRD intervention. Otherwise, developing an HRD intervention may be useless, right? So maybe suppose, for example, if a particular gap or discrepancy is identified by training and development or HRD intervention, you are going to fill that gap, right? But after doing the program, if the gap is still existed, what will happen? The HRD intervention is totally useless or waste, because gap is the identified problem or the discrepancy is still prevailing, even though the identified gap is tried to be filled by an HR intervention. So which means that which require another intervention, another management strategy or another management intervention is required for such a discrepancy. So before, what you need to understand from this is need assessment can be done, but not all the needs identified cannot be met by HRD interventions, right? So first, once when a particular HR need is identified, obviously you need to check whether a particular HRD intervention can fill those can meet those identified gaps, right? So then only if that is the case, in then only you can design a HRD program. It is important to stress that not every need identified can or should be addressed by the HRD intervention, but broader HRD efforts such as team building or organizational development can address those gaps in some cases, some contexts. But remember, not all the identified needs can be met or can be filled by HRD functions. Initially, you need to check whether identify identified needs can be filled or identified needs can be met by an HRD intervention. If that is the case, then only you can develop a HRD intervention. Otherwise, the resources will be wasted. That's the thing that you need to highlight, that you need to understand from this slide, right? There are basically three levels of analysis, which are organization analysis. At the organization level, this analysis can be done at the organizational level, which is known as organizational assessment or organizational analysis. And at the task level, the same thing can be done at the task level, that is known as task analysis or task assessment. And So this assessment can be done at the individual level, that is known as personal as analysis or personal assessment. So basically, need assessments are three forms: organizational, tasks. Tasks are simply job analysis, right? So you are supposed to analyze the jobs. In this, you are supposed to analyze the person, individual, job holder. And in this, at this level, you are supposed to analyze the entire organization, right? Basically, where in the training is needed and under what conditions will the training be conducted need to be identified. That is basically which sections and which organizational requirements needed for a training and development program or an HRD program. That is an organizational analysis. Then task analysis, what must be done, which means that, as you know, there in every job, in each and every job, you have tasks, duties, and responsibilities. And sometimes the current tasks, duties, and responsibilities may not contribute to the higher performance. In that case, you need to identify which task and which responsibilities, which duties really contributing to the higher performance. So then simply once the gap is identified, you need to identify which tasks, which duties, which responsibilities can really fill those identified gaps, right? So that is done at the organizational level. That is done at the that is done at the job level, which is known as task analysis, right? So what must be done? What must be done in the sense that what tasks must be done, what activities, what performances, what requirements, what duties need to be done to perform the job successfully, which may be beyond the current level of tasks, which may be beyond out of the current level of job responsibilities and duties. And those need to be identified and must be incorporated by means of a HRD program. And the third one is person analysis. Person analysis is individual analysis. In that, basically, you can identify who needs to be trained, who needs to be developed, and what kind of training they need, and what kind of development they are needed. Simply, those analysis done in those levels are known as organization, task, and person analysis. Person analysis, right? Uh, And those are the levels of need assessments or need analysis. Simply, there are different names used interchangeably, such as analysis or assessments, right? Basically, in some cases, some books says need assessment, some says need analysis, and both are the same. Right. First, we'll take the organization analysis. Organization analysis is a process used to better understand the characteristics of the organization to determine where training and development efforts are needed and the conditions within which they will be conducted. Right? So basically, as we noted in the previous slide, uh, it is a process used to better understand the characteristics of the organization. What are the characteristics of the organization? To determine where the training and development, where the HRD efforts needed, which department needed, which section needed, organization, in the organization, which division needed, which area needed. Simply, that is identified by organization analysis. And what conditions? Examples: company ABC purchased a food service operation that suffered from low employee morale. An extensive need assessment process was undertaken, which resulted in the food service division which resulted in the food service division. In the organization, they identified the food service division requires a training or management development program, because in the managers in the food service division performing underperformed, right? Suffered from low employee morale, right? In this purchase company, they identified the employees having a low employee morale. Then extensive need assessment was done, and that identified only the food department, food division, food service division requires a management development program. The managers in that division requires a kind of a development program to improve the morale. Then the managers, once the managers' morale is increased, upgraded, obviously, then finally they can meet the customer needs. So what they identified, this division required a management program. So basically, our task is where training and development is needed. Where this is very much important. Where where the training and development is, where the training and development effort is needed, just to determine organization analysis is to check whether where the training and development is required or HRD is required. In this example, the food service operation was purchased and they identified that there is a low employee morale in that company, and extensive need assessment was conducted, and that identified where required, where the HRD intervention is required. The food service division required a HRD intervention. Then they identified uh, a management development program is needed, and that was implemented. And within 4 years, what happens? Product defects dropped dramatically. Defects being produced dropped dramatically, and on-time delivery increased to 98%, and plant capacity was increased by 35%, which means that their performance is significantly high after the program. So that's how you can conduct HRD intervention, or simply training and development intervention. The point to stress here that the organization analysis they conducted as part of the overall need assessment provided the impetus for successful HRD, or as well as the content of the actual development program. Right? Basically, HRD interventions can increase ultimately, or can fill the substandard performance or the gaps, right? Simply gaps can be identified, and identified gaps can be filled through HRD efforts, right? So basically, in this case, organizational analysis help for designing an HRD effort. Then systematic collection of data, then task analysis, systematic collection of data about specific job or group of jobs to determine what an employee should be taught to achieve optimal performance. So basically, as I told you about this at the at the previous slide, one before the previous slide, a task analysis is about analyzing the jobs, or assessing the jobs. In that, basically what we can do is to systematically collect the data about specific jobs or groups of jobs to determine what an employee should be taught, what task should be taught, what task. For example, for a job, as you know, For a jobs, we have different tasks, right? Task 1, task 2, task 3, likewise task 4, and likewise many tasks. And suppose these are the tasks uh, given in the job description, right? In the need assessment task analysis, you identify some more tasks need to be added. Task 6 and task 7 need to be added in order to have a higher performance. And once these tasks added, obviously the current level of current employee do not know anything about these newly added tasks, and those must be trained, right? And so then in this case, a training intervention is supposed to be developed, right? So I will ask a question on this. I will give you a small case. I will give you a small case, let's say, by like I gave you in the HRM paper, right? Suppose HR manager's job has these type of tasks. Several tasks is given: job designing, job uh, analysis, and recruitment, selection, right? Recruitment, selection, and suppose we have some other, suppose 10 tasks given, right? In the case, Amal is an HR manager and he has to perform A, B, C, D, E, F, G tasks currently. An intensive task analysis was conducted in this organization and identified 3 more tasks to be added. A, B, C, E, F, G tasks need to be added, right? Well-being, health and safety, and digitalization skills need to be added to have the highest performance of this HR manager job. And uh, currently, Amal is performing his duties, right? So then, which type of program will you be able to design? Which type of a program will you be able to design for this? I mean, I'm expecting in this case, whether a training program or a development program, right? So simply whether a training development or training or development program need to be designed for Amal. Explain this, simply explain this, whether which type of a which type of program are you going to design, whether it is a training program or whether it is a development program. That's the question. Is it clear? This is the question. Now how you can answer to this kind of a question? Yes. Did you get that point? Amal is currently performing HR manager's job and he is performing A, B, C, D, E, F, like 10 job positions, 10 job tasks. Tasks I explained in the question, right? An extensive job analysis, task analysis was performed in this organization and identified that 3 more tasks needed to be added to this HR manager's role. Those identified needs are digitalization skills, uh, well-being, uh, and employment relations, right? Uh, and you are supposed to design a program, HRD program, in this case, whether you are going to develop a training program or a development program for Amal. What is your answer? Explain. Yes, I'm asking from you. Yes. But you understand from this whether you are going to design a training program or a development program. Quickly, please. Right. So why you say this? If the development is obviously, as you know, if one is not the answer, then if you have two options, the other one is uh, the obvious answer. Yes, correct. Because current tasks, current job, it clearly says that Amal is performing currently the HR manager's role. That is the current job, right? Right? So that is the current job. And as I told you, uh, please carefully listen everything what I'm talking about. That's learning because we discussed the learning and the HRD learning principles and everything earlier, right? So that is the basic of training and development. If the case given like this, current Amal's next promotion is HR manager. He is currently performing HRD executive, right? Amal is currently performing as HRD executive, and his next promotion is the HR manager. And an extensive HRD program task analysis was conducted and identified three more tasks need to be added to this HRM job post, human resource manager's job position. Right? Since the Amal is the prospective candidate for this job, Amal will be given a special training on the identified three tasks. And you are supposed to identify whether the Amal's a targeted program is a training program or a development program? That's the question. Right. So in this case, the answer is a development program. Clear? So those are the things you need to clarify, understand, and this is basically task analysis. And next, results of a task analysis, the appropriate standards of performance, how tasks should be performed to meet these standards, and the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics that employee need to process in order to meet those standards. Basically, what are the job of key performance indicators and how these tasks to be performed to meet those key performance indicators, and what knowledge, skills, and abilities required to perform these standards. So basically task analysis identified those things, and additionally what are the things that needed to be included, identified, and those can be added to the job, and they can be trained to the employee. Then person analysis, and person analysis can be done by next time, since we have, I think today we have only 1 hour, right? 11 to 12, and next time we can discuss this further. Done. Do you have any question? If you have no questions, then I can wind up and see you by next time.